The college football show coming your way on what I thought was going to be a bit of a sleepy Friday. But man, we got a lot to talk about. Appreciate you being here. Comments and questions are welcome. Of course, we will open up the phone lines if time permits, and I believe it will. This is the voice of college football. My name's Mark, and if you're just stopping by for the first time, lock it in if you love college football. We talk college football 24/7, 365 here, even though at times it's difficult to do that. Folks, the YouTube algorithm is working against us here at the Voice of College Football. So dig in and make sure that we got to use the grassroots approach to get these videos out and get them watched and get people in here. So we will take any and all the help that we can get from you, our loyal and faithful community here at the Voice of College Football. And speaking of community, in the next few weeks, we'll get together and we'll talk about Patreon and the YouTube memberships and what we can do best for you. The NFL Combine's going on this week in Indianapolis. This is something that's been one of my favorite I don't want to call it a non-competition. Of course, they're competing for times and trying to impress scouts and NFL teams. So it's a competition, but you know what I mean. Not keeping score in regards to who wins and who loses. Not a game, not a tournament, an event. One of my favorites, because anything involved with the NFL draft back to the first time I remember anything about the NFL draft, I have been sold on. However, I got to say, much like a few other things, it's kind of waned in interest the last few years, and I have not seen anything from the NFL Combine. I do believe that we will pick up a few news and notes, though, from the NFL Combine. If you have anything you'd like to discuss or anything that you think is of note from Indianapolis, please leave that in the chat. But, man, I got to tell you, for years and years and years, ever since they started to televise that thing, which I don't even know when that was, I would bet that it would be at the beginning of the NFL Network. When was that? Like 2005, probably? Might be older than that. The NFL Network's not that old, but it is probably 20 years old that the NFL Combine has been broadcast start to finish. That every year, boom, I knew that the NFL Combine started at 9 in the morning on a Wednesday, or whatever the date and the time was, and I would turn it on and watch as much as possible, which was basically all of it, unless other things got in the way. Now, I got to say, it didn't even cross my mind the last couple of days, the NFL Combine. But there is a couple interesting tidbits that did come out related to college football. Of course, I know for a lot of you, and I mentioned this to somebody today, that our NFL draft coverage has been a bit spotty and sketchy in the past, not in terms of what we've provided always, but more about your response, because many of you could care less, or you couldn't care less. Let's get that straight. You could not care less about the NFL draft. And once those players took off their uniform for the last time after a bowl game or playoff game or whatever it was, see ya. When we first started here at the Voice of College Football, even before it was the Voice of College Football, when it was just Mark Rogers TV, many of our most viewed videos were concerning the NFL draft. And we know that the draft is huge, but many of you don't care. So I get that. I respect that. And so our NFL draft coverage has been fairly spotty. There was a time where for a few years, man, I would watch the NFL draft and I'd be ready to roll, and we'd do live streams after the draft and before the draft, and I would do player profiles. And there were a couple of years where I would watch the first round, and halfway through the first round, boom, I would deliver a analysis of the first round and all the selections. And then I would do the same thing at the back half of the first round and go through the entire draft like that. But not necessarily does it seem to be an appetite for that, at least not here. Thumbs up or down. Maybe I'll leave this in the on the community tab. I'll make a poll and we will gauge your interest in the NFL draft. Yakov's here. Good to see you. Tukey G here and accounted for. Good point. I've not heard much about the combine either. Well, it's not that I haven't heard much about the combine. I've been on social media a bit to see a lot posted about the combine. And if you, in this day and age, if it's kind of tough to stay away from certain topics, political and otherwise, but if you really want to, you can stay away from it. Just don't turn it on. But I don't know that anything's come out like, wow, that was a shocking statement from the combine, or this dude ran a 4.25 at the combine, or this dude blew up and he is not going to be able to recover from his poor showing in the combine. Lisa says, hello, Mark. I have not been really paying attention to the combine, but since we have 15 players, meaning Ohio State, everyone, 15 players there this year, I have watched several player interviews from there. And again, as I stated off the top, I didn't think there was going to be much to talk about today, except the combine. And again, I'm way behind on the combine and probably won't catch up. But I came across a lot of interesting little nuggets that we will get to outside of the combine. Lisa's here. Karen is here with just a hi from Karen. Good to see you, of course. Lisa, I can't wait for the NFL draft this year to see where all my Buckeyes end up going. All right, let's tee it up. This is the College Football Show. We're here every Monday through Friday, 4 p.m. Eastern Time, and the goal is to provide the best. I use that term from time to time, and I kind of scold myself because I don't know that that's really a term that anyone relates to. Who knows what the best is? The best to you, the best to somebody else, the best to me. It doesn't really matter. We just want this to be somewhere you would like to spend an hour or two every afternoon. And so we do our best to provide the best in discussion, debate, and analysis, whatever that entails. But that's been a little catchphrase of mine. And in recent days, I've thought, Mark, was that really a good catchphrase? Best discussion, debate, and analysis, whatever that is to you. Please like and subscribe. That helps us build the channel and grow the channel. All right, let's get to a few things here. This caught my eye earlier, and so I passed this article on to our buddy Corey Bratta from the Hawkeye of the Storm. So if you remember the saga of one five-star offensive tackle, Kadyn Proctor, if you understand and follow the saga there, I felt horrible for Iowa football fans. Horrible, because this is what happened. First of all, the state of Iowa does not produce five-star athletes on a regular basis. Maybe 2 to 4 every 10 years, something in that range. Xavier Wampa, the safety a couple of years ago, would be the last other five-star. So not a lot of five-stars coming out of the state of Iowa. And it being a bit smaller state, very proud state, very football-oriented state. They love their Hawkeyes, but it's not an elite program. Very good program, top 25 program. I would put it in that range. We'll see where my program rankings stack up for Iowa right now. We'll do that in a few weeks. But they love their Hawkeyes. They love their football team. So they got a five-star in Kadyn Proctor, who for a long period of time prior to the National Signing Day of 2020, must have been 2023. Yes, National Signing Day of 2023, that he had been committed to the University of Iowa for a long, long time. So they fully anticipated, Iowa fans, that he would be there and signed and ready to roll to lead Iowa football going forward. At least be a premier left tackle going forward. And then on the final day, as happens across the nation, so it's not unheard of. He flipped, changed his commitment, reneged on his commitment, which drives me crazy. Let me be emphatic about this. It drives me crazy when kids flip their commitment. Then it's not a commitment. If there is any high school football player out there listening to me right now, and we're also on audio, Spotify, Google, Amazon, Apple. Yes, if you're listening, you're watching, do not commit unless you are going to, in fact, commit. Do not commit unless you are going to commit. That's what a commitment is. It's not a whim for the day. It is not a lean. It's not a I prefer them today. No, I made a commitment. And I don't know how many of these commitments don't hold. 20%, 30%, whatever the number is. I don't know. I would guess it would be in that range. So for Kadyn Proctor, he takes Iowa all the way to National Signing Day, and he flips and signs with Alabama. Fine. That is his right. It's even his right to change his mind and dishonor. We'll use that term because if somebody's honoring their commitment, then they can also dishonor their commitment. He dishonored his commitment, and he turned his back on the state of Iowa, and he signed with Alabama. Again, that is completely his right. However, I wish the young man, like others, would think this through and truly make a commitment. Dabo Swinney gets criticized at times at Clemson for saying, you know what? If you are committing here to Clemson, you are not visiting anywhere else. That seems, in this day and age, it seems stern, harsh, a bit abrupt, a bit authoritarian. But he's basically making the point, get all your visits out of the way, talk to everyone you want to talk to, because once you commit to our football program, you belong to us. You have made a commitment. He actually defines the word correctly. We have taken the word commitment in this football situation, and maybe in other walks of life and other industries as well, but taken the term commitment and we've made it a preference, a lean, that the odds are favoring that side. That's not a commitment. So what made matters worse, far worse, goes off to Alabama. They go to the college football playoff. He plays in the Rose Bowl. Nick Saban retires. Kadyn Proctor then goes to the transfer portal, and it was quite obvious that he had already decided, I'm going home. Well, decided, that's another term. He had thoughts about going home. He had thoughts about leaving Bama to go back to Iowa. So, transfer portal, Kadyn Proctor declares, I have transferred to the University of Iowa. And all those Iowa fans that were left at the altar just a year earlier were overjoyed. They rolled out the red carpet for him and introduced him at the basketball game, and he got the hero's welcome that he had righted his wrong, and he was coming back to Iowa football. A few weeks later, apparently after going on vacation with some buddies on the Alabama football team, Kadyn Proctor decided, no, I'm going to transfer back to the University of Alabama. Iowa commitment, goes to Alabama, transfers to Iowa, goes back to Alabama. Anybody see anything wrong with this? If my son did this, I would slap him around. All right. Again, there's a difference between what you have the right to do and what you should do, or how you should conduct yourself. All right. this article that came out today, and in the words of Kadyn Proctor, and it's not just some kind of exclusive article, you can see this information all over the place. Kadyn Proctor came out, had a couple words to say about Iowa football and why he went back to Alabama. And as soon as I saw the article, as soon as I saw the headline, so I'm on my phone, I open my phone and I get the political stuff and I get the college football stuff, and I get the entertainment stuff, and I click on whatever I want to click on, and I get teased by this and that. And I see where Kadyn Proctor tells us the two words that caused him to leave Iowa. And I immediately knew what those two words were. Immediately. Knowing where he came from, Alabama, and knowing the Iowa football program to a certain extent, I knew those two words instantly. National championship. Folks in the chat here. So it's not surprising that Aaron Taylor would say this because he's a Michigan fan. So I'm not saying you're wrong, Aaron. I'm just saying, obviously, most of you are very predictable. Yeah, well, Bill O'Brien didn't take the job at Ohio State, and on the day that he took the job, leave Ohio State, and then a year later come back to Ohio State, work the job for 2 weeks, and then leave Ohio State again. Yes, he took a job. And you want to mention Bill O'Brien, we can mention all sorts of coaches. This has become pretty commonplace where a coach will take a job at the end of a season. One of the offensive or defensive coordinators, I forget which, at the University of Miami, had just taken the job at one of the schools in either the Sun Belt or Conference USC, like UAB or somebody, and got a job offer at Miami. He's gone. Well, there are tons of examples. So why bring up Bill O'Brien? Bill O'Brien is just one of many. One of many. I don't remember this going on years ago where a coach would, well, certainly the players couldn't do this. And they're not just going from team to team. They're leaving teams and going to teams just during the off season, just for winter workouts and the spring practice, and then they're going to another team. So it's kind of disingenuous just to bring up Bill O'Brien. If you could bring up a counter to Kadyn Proctor, then please do. But this is the only one of its kind that I know of that fills all the blanks and checks all the boxes that I'm bringing up. So that's kind of an ignorant comment about Bill O'Brien. Because again, it doesn't match. And also there's a bunch of other coaches. So list out all the coaches, Aaron, that have done what Bill O'Brien did, because there's many. But I'm naming and discussing the one player, the only one who did what Kadyn Proctor did. So you got to do a better job of keeping up with me here. All right. So back to Kadyn Proctor. So it did not surprise me in any way that Kadyn Proctor said this. Why Kadyn Proctor left Iowa. Quote, never heard the words national championship. So I assume the beginning of this article is just going to tell us everything that I just told you. So he was on The Tides That Bind on Fox Nation. It's a documentary on the 2024 Alabama football season. Quote, Coach Saban left. I started thinking, who's going to be our new coach? What am I going to do? I came here to play for Coach Saban. You know what I'm saying. So I went back to Iowa. He just wanted to be by his family. But then a month and a half into being there, it just didn't feel right. I didn't have no close relationships, and maybe a grammar class, I don't know. I didn't have no close relationships with none of the guys. That's a triple negative. I couldn't relate to none of them. Whoa, he's adding up. I never heard the words national championship come out of their mouths. It just wasn't the place for me. 3 months later, I left. Was it 3 months? And that's the end of the article. So it got me to thinking, what schools are playing for national championships? And when I say that, I don't mean necessarily which schools are capable of playing for national championships. There's only about 8. But for example, Curt Cignetti at Indiana. Now, I might be wrong. He's only been there for 1 year, and he talked a lot of crap, and he backed most of it up. Toward the end of the season, leading into the Ohio State game and then into the playoff, he started to go off the rails a little bit too much. He started to get a little bit too full of himself. But Curt Cignetti delivered. And Curt Cignetti, to date, would be coaching a program that has no shot of winning a national championship. Until further notice, no shot. What would Curt Cignetti say that, though? And would Curt Cignetti, does he really believe that? I get the indication that he believes that he can win a national championship at Indiana. So my question is not solely who's capable of winning a national championship. It's more so who believes they can win a national championship and who is running a football program, not just at the head coaching position, although that's the most important, but as an administration and as a football department and a football program and athletics department is conducting themselves as going for the gold. We don't need to name all the obvious ones. Does Kansas State believe that they can win a national championship? Are they conducting their football program with the intent of winning a national championship? Kenny Dillingham, much like Curt Cignetti, I would put him in that same category of being a guy who, at this point, is coaching a football program that has basically no shot of winning a national championship to date. I'm not saying that can't change, but I get the impression that Kenny Dillingham is gunning for a national championship, believes he can win a national championship, and that's why he's coaching. That's why he's at Arizona State, and he believes he can do it there. Those are the programs I'm looking for. I know Alabama's gunning for national championships. I know Michigan is, and Georgia and Notre Dame, etc. I know that they are. I know that Tennessee believes they can win a national championship, and by all indication, they should be able to win a national championship. Does Arkansas believe, and are they conducting their football program in a way that speaks to winning a national championship? If I throw out the name Stanford, we would all bust a gut. But a little over 10 years ago, 10 years ago, they won the Rose Bowl. Stanford was contending for national championships. Not for long, but for about 5 years. They were a contender for the national championship. Now that's a complete joke. So, Jim, I would like to know why you don't think Arkansas is playing for a national championship. Again, if you're listening to my question, I'm not talking about who can win a national championship. I'm talking about who's leading a program, conducting themselves as though they are gunning for and want to win a national championship. I think that Arkansas does conduct their program like they want to win a national championship. I might be wrong. Okay, again, I'm not asking who can win a national championship. I'm asking who is conducting their. This is a good test case right here from Mike. SMU. At first thought, at least for me, SMU national championship. Are you kidding me? I don't know. Look at how they're conducting themselves. They want to play big time college football so badly that they say, forget the money. We just want to be in the ACC. We just want to be somewhere where we can compete and we've got a path. So keep your money. We'll take care of that. And they went after a really good head coach, assistant, offensive coordinator in Red Lashley. Now he's got things rolling there. They're in Dallas. They probably think with our money and playing in this area, this metropolitan area in this state, we are conducting ourselves gunning for a national championship. So I'm going to pick on Iowa because Iowa's a much better football program than everybody we've named. They're better than Arkansas. They're better than SMU. I don't care that SMU went to the playoff. Iowa's a much better football program right now than SMU. They've accomplished more. They've done more. They played in Big Ten championship games. They have lived in the top 25 for the most part under Kirk Ferentz. But it always struck me as being a strong indication. When I've had conversations with Corey Bratta on our Iowa show, please check it out, Tuesdays at 5:30 Eastern. We have a great time, slice and dice Iowa football, that I have noted to him many times in listening to Kirk Ferentz. And when particular questions are brought to the table concerning, let's say, like rankings, like your offense ranks such and such, your points per game ranks such and such, that the media is thinking nationally. And they are presenting national perspective questions to him. And he's solely thinking about like the old school Big Ten, not even the current Big Ten, like playoff and we get in and then we can do some damage. Kind of like this old school Big Ten mentality that if we can go 8-3, and I know that's only 11 games. I said that for a purpose because that's old school, 11 game schedule. We can go 8-3. Maybe we win the Big Ten, a la Hayden Fry a number of times. 8-3, 1981, 8-3, 1990, and Iowa's going to the Rose Bowl. They're getting their heads stomped in, but they're going to the Rose Bowl. And I would like to have the specifics of these questions and responses, but they're dated to a certain extent. So I'm not coming up with these specifics. But I particularly remember him being asked about their winning percentage and if they're winning enough. And he mentioned being 5th or 6th. We're 5th or 6th in winning percentage. That was his response. 5th or 6th in winning percentage. Well, my first thought was, you're not 5th or 6th in winning percentage. He said something like, we're 5th or 6th in winning percentage in the last 10 years. And I went, what? Then I thought, oh, he means in the Big Ten. 5th or 6th in winning percentage. It doesn't surprise me that Kadyn Proctor would be part of the Iowa football program for 3 months and not hear the words national championship. Now, that doesn't mean that every program should be out there talking about a national championship every day at workouts. That would be a complete joke if you're at Houston right now, or Cincinnati, or you're at Vanderbilt, and maybe Clark Lee. Knowing Clark Lee, I would not be surprised if he doesn't mention a national championship. But there's a fine line between talking big, making big goals, presenting big aspirations and challenges to your team, and then also putting in the work. Okay, forget what we just talked about for 10 minutes and psyched everybody up about talking about national championships. Now we got to get to work. Now we got to lift weights, watch film, run, puke our guts out, get in the right 3-point stance, do all the things that we need to do that make each one of you a better player today than you were yesterday. 1% better. And if you just live in the clouds, if your heads are in the clouds all the time and you're just talking about national championships, obviously you're not going to accomplish that. So there's a balance, but it does not surprise me that Kadyn Proctor would be at in the Iowa football program for 3 months and not hear the words national championship. I got to think that, and this is somebody much older than Kadyn Proctor assessing the situation, that he should have known that before he got there. D-Rock Irish, I don't believe you might be correct there. I think you're thinking of Brian Ferentz's contract. So 2 or 3 years ago, when that ridiculous bonus structure was added to Brian Ferentz's contract as offensive coordinator, one stipulation was averaging 25 points per game. The other one was if we win 7 games, then another bonus kicks in. That was for Brian Ferentz. Maybe it is for Kirk as well. He's meeting that bonus every year, if it is. And even Brian did, even though the offense was pathetic beyond belief. Pathetic's not even the right word. I use that word quite a bit because it applies in other circumstances, but pathetic a million times over. And even Brian Ferentz was receiving his bonuses because they would win 7 games. But for Kirk Ferentz, I don't know. It's been forever since he did not win 7 games in a full season. We're talking about, I believe, 2016. That's a ridiculous. If that is in his contract, that's pathetic. You should be able to win 7 games at Iowa in your sleep. They basically win 3 games out of conference. So they win 2 cream puffs and they beat Iowa State 80% of the time. So that's 3 wins anyway. All you have to do is go 4-5 in the Big Ten. And even with that, the Brian Ferentz contract stipulation was 7 games total, meaning they could be 6-6 and go to a bowl game and win and go 7-6. So my question to all of you, and thank you for dropping that, Jackson, is who really wants to win a national championship? Aaron says Illinois wants to be. So this is an interesting case right here. This is another interesting school that we bring into the mix. And again, I'm not saying who can win because it doesn't appear as though Maryland has any shot to win a national championship. But my concern right now, because of what was stated or was not stated by Iowa football when Kadyn Proctor was in the building, curious, and we only have indications. We don't know. None of us know, but we can take educated guesses at who is really conducting themselves because of the administration and because of the football coach in play. Now, I would hope that every football coach in America, even if they know reality, they know what they see on the field, they know what they have versus their competition, but that they are still driving and still have that burning desire and believe, I am here to win a national championship. I am here to win every game. When I was covering Mississippi State, so as a sports director in Mississippi State was one of the teams we covered. I'd go to Jackie Sherrill's news conference every week, and every so often he would mention this. It's our goal to win every month. What does that mean? Well, to him, that meant to have a winning record every month. It was his goal to have a winning record every month. And I would sit there and think, okay, you play 4 games a month. So you want to go 3-1 every month. And maybe one of those months you play 5 games. That happens, twice a year, 4 times a year. There are 5 weeks in a month. So September, October, November, December, and this is when there were 11 games in a season. And you're looking at like 3-1, 3-1, 3-1. No, September, October, November. Okay. You're looking at like 3-1, 3-1, 3-2. What is that? 6-2 doesn't come out quite right. 9-4. So anyway, it's basically 7-4, 8-3. And I would think, and they had buys and so forth. But anyway, it's right around 8-3. And I would think, this is your goal? Your goal is to go 8-3. This is what you're telling us. Have you ever really thought this through? And if that's the case, that's fine. I would think with a lot of these universities that there is a disconnect between administration and football coach. That for the administration, they are there to educate people, meaning not to educate them on how to block a rush end or how to run a pass pattern, but educate them for everyday society. That's why they're there. The football business probably just kind of gets in their way. They're just probably annoyed by it, but they can't ignore it because it's too important. It's what the university is largely known for. And it brings in a lot of money. And if it's not bringing in a lot of money, then it's a problem. And it should be bringing in money. So I would think for a lot of administrators, they would be in that bucket of, let's just have a football program that's not embarrassing to us, that gets the bowl games to make extra money, and where we're good enough, 8-4, 7-5, we are good enough to generally fill the stadium and make as much money as possible. And we certainly enjoy those media rights checks. So I would think a lot of administrators who see football, and I get it, I understand their viewpoint, see football and athletics as kind of a nuisance because that's not why the university was built. Why they would say, let's just be respectable. I don't care about winning national championships. I just want to be in the black. Just want to be in the black so we can make money. But Maryland's an interesting one right there. As Michael says, Maryland has high-paying boosters from big names, and Maryland has a lot of NIL money like Ohio State and Michigan. Again, Mike bringing up SMU. Small Time Republic says Arizona State probably has a better shot than Indiana. Well, they're going to make less money, but from what I understand, Arizona high school football is getting better and better all the time. It is vastly improved. David believes more teams can win the Natty now. I generally agree with that. Well, we've got an open field of 12 teams. It's going to be 16 rather quickly. So while I don't see the Arizona States of the world being able to put on a run like Ohio State did this past year, they certainly have the opportunity now where they did not before. Just look at, I ran through on yesterday's show, I ran through 2014 through 2024 and what the playoff would look like in each of those seasons with those Big Ten and SEC requirements. So we've done that in the past, but we didn't have those requirements. And that changes things. That changes a couple spots each year. And Northwestern shows up in the playoffs 3 times. That's pretty funny. And Wake Forest and Virginia show up in the playoff. But to win 4 games, that is a whole other deal. It almost becomes easier to make the playoff than it does to win once you're in. As Jim says right there, and we addressed the Stanford situation a few minutes ago to a certain extent, if Stanford was all in, I think they have more money than most schools. Jim, you would be right. I believe Stanford has more money than any school outside the Ivy League. I don't think football is among their priorities, though. So, yeah, when you see those academic endowments, I don't know what the answer to that is in regards to whether that money can be mixed, whether there can be a decision made. We've got an athletic endowment that is, in Stanford's case, I believe it's like $15 billion. And then we can take 500 million. Football, still have 14.5 billion here. I don't know the answer to that question. I doubt if those lines are crossed often. So again, Kadyn Proctor makes the comment, I left Iowa because I never heard national championship mentioned. So again, my thought is, who is not just capable of winning a national championship? I just want to know who truly goes to work every day as both administration, athletic department, AD, and football staff and coach thinking we're all in to win a national championship. And outside all the obvious ones, Kenny Dillingham, Arizona State, Curt Cignetti at Indiana, I've never heard, now I'm not listening to every week, listen to Brett Bielema's news conference at Illinois, and I've got a ton of respect for Brett Bielema. I think he's excellent at what he does. I don't know that he's talking about winning national championships at Illinois. I would think that Jonathan Smith may utter that word or those words at Michigan State. I bet Luke Fickell has said that at Wisconsin. Look at the money that Texas Tech is shelling out this offseason to get better, to compete. They see what Arizona State's done. They see that the Big 12 is wide open. They don't want to be left behind. They are gunning for and see that opportunity in the Big 12. Just an interesting thought right there. When I covered Alabama, Ole Miss, and Mississippi State, meaning not covered it like I cover it here, but right there at practice, at the news conferences, at the games, every day. Alabama was going through a rough stretch when I was there. They did win the SEC a couple times when I was there. They did have some excellent teams a few times, but they had some rough years, marginal seasons for them. But they still talked about national championships all the time. Ole Miss and Mississippi State They weren't talking about national championships. They were not talking about the SEC. Now, of course, Ole Miss now would be talking about the SEC and winning national championships. I would think that Lane Kiffin has talked about national championships. All right, on to our next topic. Reminding everyone to please like the video and subscribe right here at the Voice of College Football. The College Football Show, Mondays through Fridays at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. We appreciate you being here. It's good to be here every day, Monday through Friday, 4 Eastern. Have a nice weekend. We'll be back on Monday. But unless something breaks in the news cycle, and we will be here live. All right, let's get to our next topic. So I saw a few things pop up here on ESPN. So North Carolina's Mike Lombardi confirms talks amid Hard Knocks link. I don't know what this is about, but it should be interesting. UNC football GM Michael Lombardi acknowledged that the program under new coach Bill Belichick is considering a behind-the-scenes look at the team amid a report that the Tar Heels could be the focus of HBO's Hard Knocks off-season. Okay, there's a lot of conversations going on. We had a lot of offers from people all over. Of course, this is gold for a documentary for football this season. Just like Dion was a couple of years ago. Bill Belichick and this new staff at North Carolina, this is ready-made. Lombardi was asked about a front office sports report that North Carolina would be featured on the show that debuted last year with the New York Giants and is an offshoot of long-running HBO series Hard Knocks. Wait, it's not Hard Knocks? I thought it was Hard Knocks. Oh, off-season. Okay, interesting. All right. I got to tell you, I've not watched any of these Hard Knocks series. None. He said it would be, I've heard it's great. He said it would be, it's like somebody mentioned me. I was having a conversation and The Chosen was brought up. And I had to say, never seen it. I've heard good things, heard bad things. He said it would be a university decision, but added that Hard Knocks does an incredible job. Okay, so we'll be looking out for that. So is this something that's always been reserved for NFL teams? I know that Hard Knocks was originally an NFL thing. So I thought maybe this was the college version, but this only seems like it's just another NFL deal, but they would go to the college ranks. Okay, interesting. All right, we talked about this the other day. And what is to be done about fake injuries? College football teams could soon be charged with a timeout or a penalty for players faking injuries while after plays during games. Okay, I am just waiting to see how this is going to be determined. The NCAA Football Rules Committee has proposed a timeout to be charged whenever medical personnel enter the field to evaluate players after the ball has been spotted for the ensuing play. Teams without timeouts would be assessed a 5-yard delay of game penalty for each instance. So whether the player is injured or not, okay, the proposal is among several that will go back to schools, then go before the NCAA's Playing Rules Oversight Panel for possible approval in April. Faking injuries has become a significant topic in recent years. The SEC implemented guidelines that included fines and potential suspensions for coaches whose players repeatedly faked injuries. So, yes, the Football Coaches Association had proposed, like we talked about the other day, requiring any players who need medical attention to miss an entire possession rather than only one play, but the Rules Committee instead proposed losing timeouts. Again, I don't know how this addresses the determination of who's injured and who's not. And just because you're not injured doesn't mean you can't be hurt for a period of time in which you don't believe that you can play. We've all been in that situation athletically at some point. You slightly tweaked an ankle and you walked it off and you were playing 10 minutes later. We have a player that's struggling and the official stops the clock to get that player out. We will not invoke the timeout. Wow. I'm not hearing any declarative way to determine this stuff. A player is struggling? What does that mean? The Secretary Rules Editor for Football in the SEC and Sunbelt Coordinator of Football Officials. There's these plays where the ball's down, the defense is still trying to get to their side of the ball, and a player falls down. Those are the types of plays that we don't want, that we think is a bad look, and we think this rule will address it. Absolutely. Yes. However, I don't know how you can determine that. Shaw reiterated that legitimately injured players should stay down and require stoppage to receive medical attention. But many of the suspicious instances occurred after the ball was spotted for the next play. Okay, a little bit of clarification there. Okay, they're going to determine based on when the player goes down or stays down. So none of this, I'm standing there for 15 seconds and then all of a sudden I just collapse like a pilot. Yeah. Coaches value their timeouts incredibly. Making this a timeout, if a player were to wait and then go down very late, the coaches would really be against, unless you're really injured and then they may have needed a timeout anyway. Well, okay, we got to see this play out, because I think they've addressed a few things here in terms of the timing of when the player falls to his knees or can't get up. But in terms of determining whether it's legit, I see nothing in here that is telling us any type of determination of whether it's legit or not. All right, they may limit timeouts in overtime games. Here's the situation that could be addressed. Many of you remember at the end of the Ohio State-Oregon game, the first time they played, Oregon received a 12-man on the field penalty at the end of that October 12th game, which resulted in a penalty, but also removed 4 valuable seconds from the clock. That was more important than the yardage. Trailing 32-31, the Buckeyes tried to get closer for a field goal attempt, but the clock expired on the ensuing play, giving the Ducks the win. The NCAA soon issued a new rules interpretation that seemingly closed the loophole and is in line with the latest Rules Committee proposal. Another proposal would whistle kickoff returns dead anytime the return man makes a T signal with his arms. Situation surfaced in the Citrus Bowl between Illinois and South Carolina, leading to a testy on-field exchange between Brad Bielema and Shane Beamer. Other proposals included referees only using the terms upheld or overturned to describe replay rulings rather than confirmed or stands. The Rules Committee had extensive discussions about targeting fouls and made a recommendation to the conference commissioners and college football's officiating board of managers, but Shaw noted that the targeting rule, as it's defined, and whether to disqualify offenders or overturn will not change. Targeting rule has served us well. We had the lowest number of disqualifications targeting fouls and force per game this year, 0.14. Okay. I think all of us would have guessed a lot higher total than that. They are telling us that there were only 14 targeting fouls for every 100 games. I know fans think there's one in every game, but there's just not. So we're going in the right direction. What do you guys think of that? Would you guys have believed that stat? 14 targeting penalties for every 100 games. I'm going to remember that one. I assume that's correct. That's accurate. What is Christopher fired up about in the chat here? Christopher started with, I can't even find the beginning of this. Christopher says, nobody's watching these stupid games. Nobody's watching what games? The Troy, Louisiana Monroe game? What are we talking about here? So that is that. Appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. We will throw out the call-in line if you would like to join us. This really bothers me. This is cut off. That was not like that before. They changed this program, and apparently, yeah, the window does not fit correctly. I'll have to do something about that. Don't know what happened there. I also want to get to a story concerning Texas football tickets that I'm sure you guys will love. And again, this is the College Football Show, Monday through Friday, 4 p.m. Eastern Time with all of you. And we've left the call-in line there in the chat. So let's get to this story. So here we've got, how about this? Come on, open for me. Well, that's not good. Let's try it again. Well, we will wait. There we go. So let's get through this one, then we'll take a call. Look at this. Texas will be raising football season ticket prices by $13 per game next season. Tries to meet rising costs. What could that be attributed to? Athletic Director Chris Del Conte announced the price increase this week in his annual campus town hall, where he detailed the program's expected finances upon final approval of a landmark $2.8 billion lawsuit settlement that lays the foundation for players to receive money directly from their schools. Texas will have nearly $30 million in new costs, about 200 new scholarships across all sports. 200 new scholarships. 200 new scholarships. That has to be explained. The ticket price increase will help cover some of that. The increased scholarships will cost about $9.2 million, and the school plans to pay $20.5 million annually to its athletes. We plan to get to the full limit. We're doing this because we want to maintain Texas as the best athletic department in the country. I'm sure that's a definitive statement. I love when athletic directors make those kind of bold statements. Well, by what measure? Texas was the only program to qualify for the CFP each of the past 2 seasons. Texas reported $332 million in operating revenue and $325 million operating expenses. So they made $7 million. The first time a top division public school had topped the $300 million mark in both categories. All right, so the prices go up. I saw a post today, and we'll get to this call in just a second. I saw a post today relating to people's angst about prices and maybe about the political stances of some companies. I don't know. I think it was more about the prices, and said, there should be a national boycott on these companies on this particular day. And I'm all for that. If there is truly something justified to be boycotting, and the same thing could be done with college football. If only sports fans knew the power that they possess. If we only knew the power that we possess, sports fans could get away with anything, but it takes discipline and it takes organization. And we're nowhere close to those two things. Most people don't have discipline, and the organization attempt to get a large percentage of sports fans together to prove a point, that would be a massive undertaking. All right. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. We got Chris on the line.
Hi, Mark.
Hey, Chris. How are you?
How are you? Good. I didn't really. Maybe you can help me. I didn't know. I guess what the number of people were that were did the bowl games. I guess did they do pretty well as far as getting viewership? I haven't really kept up with it, so I'm sorry I can't.
Well, we can look at those. We have in the past.
Well, I mean, compared. I'm not trying to throw shade on you, Mark. I'm just curious actually to find out whether or not people are actually as interested, more interested, less interested. I don't
Are
know.
we talking about the bowl games or playoff games?
Well, there's still bowl games even with the playoffs, so it's kind of both, I guess. I mean, they
Well,
call
there's
them
a
bowl
huge
games, but
difference.
not necessarily. I mean, they use the
No,
bowl games.
there's a huge difference.
Well, I don't know what you want me to tell you. I just there's the
Well, what
bowl
I'm
games.
trying to convey is that a bowl game is just an extra game at the end of the season. If it
I
is not
understand
within the
that.
college football playoff, if it's within the playoff, then it, of course, has a lot more
Well,
importance because it's toward
see, that's
winning a
where
championship.
I don't know. I mean, it's not to contradict you necessarily, Mark. I just sure if I really agree with that statement. I mean, maybe for you, I mean that's fair. I mean, from your perspective, you know that's much more important. But I think you can't necessarily speak for everybody for that. I mean, that's kind of your opinion, isn't it?
It's really not much of an opinion. It's more about what's objective.
Well, I mean, it makes the assumption that almost everybody is. You know, I understand what you're trying to say, and I'm not even saying you're wrong. I just maybe if I was directly involved with it, maybe if I was like a student athlete at whatever school, which I don't know what school it would have been, but because I'm not any good, but
So for example, do you remember the days? This is basically before our time, but do you remember the days when in the NCAA men's basketball tournament during the Final Four, the two teams that lost the semifinal games would play a game, a consolation game?
no, I honestly don't remember
Okay,
that.
well, that's what used to happen. So there'd be the two Final Four games, and then maybe the next day, the two teams
Yeah,
that lost would play a consolation game the day before the national championship game. Now, there could be a random soul out there that's more interested in the consolation game because their team's playing in it, but the national championship game is objectively more important than the consolation game. That can't be debated.
no,
By pure definition, it is a more important game.
I understand what you're saying. I don't
Okay.
even know that. I mean, I remember something like that in high school basketball. If that's what you're trying to get at, yeah, I remember that being the case when I was in high school. They had a state championship game, and then I think they had like a bracket. Actually, it wasn't just a game; it was like an entire bracket for the teams that lost, so that they could advance to a consolation title. Is what it was in high school. I don't know if you're familiar with that. Maybe you're not, but yeah, they used to have an entire bracket that for the I don't know how many teams it included, but it was basically you had the state champion, and then you had the, I guess it'd be the consolation bracket that you know, eventually became between. So you had two titles, I guess. I don't know. At least that's what I remember it being like. So you could win either a state title or you could win like this consolation title.
So there we have in front of us, Chris, the television numbers for the playoff
I
and
can't look at
also
it, Mark.
bowl
I'm talking
games.
to you right now. I can't look at it while I'm talking
Oh, okay.
to you. But and it's not whether they're better or worse. I don't know that it really matters to me, Mark. I guess if there's a demand for it, that's sufficient. Like they say, the ends justify the means. But just for what is ever it's worth, which it might not be worth anything. But I wasn't as interested in the playoff games personally. I'm just speaking for myself as the bowl games. That's just me. It doesn't mean that I'm right, but I guess I
What
kind of
bowl
wonder.
game were you more interested in than what playoff game?
Well, the playoffs really, in my opinion, Mark. I know they had these preliminary pairings that were kind of iffy to begin with. I mean, just to fill a bracket, really, is what it seemed like. The only thing I might say about it, though, I kind of think maybe the way they kind of put them together was a little odd, but I don't know how many people watch those games. I mean, I think those were maybe meant for people to, the games that they had at the home sites. There were how many of them were there? I guess there was as many as what, three or four of them, maybe. Anyway,
Four.
okay. And they
Uh,
might have done pretty well. I mean, I'm not going to say they didn't, but
Well,
really,
anywhere from 6.5 million to
okay.
almost 15 million people watch those
So I mean,
games.
yeah, they drew a crowd, obviously, but I just kind of wonder. That's not really my issue. Really, it's just that we're talking about kids. I mean, I guess you could define a kid as being someone up to age 21. I'll go along with that. That's fair. Up until age 21. So they have the right to if they want to participate. But I just kind of wonder, Mark, if it's really the best thing for the kids, for the fan. I guess people can make that decision up for themselves, and I don't know that one person can determine whether or not that's what's best for everybody, though. It's the only thing. I mean, it might be best for some people, but I don't know. I don't know. Have they actually ever taken a survey to find out how many people really like these things, or has it just kind of based on the
How many
numbers
people like
themselves?
the playoff?
Well, just in terms of, I know there were people that didn't like the BCS, so and I don't even know that we should go down that road because that all that does is lead to getting people upset. But I actually prefer the bowl games personally, just myself, and I've heard other people say similar things. Individual. It's an individual decision, I guess. But
Sure.
well, okay, there you go. And so I'm not saying necessarily. I mean, as we move forward, there's always the forward part of it. Maybe more people are following the bowl, playoff games. I can maybe even see how that might be true. But to do that, though, I think you need to include more teams, though, to get it to where more people are actually interested. You can't just like limit it to two conferences, or I guess it wouldn't be two. But so how is the? To me, it's like, okay, we're gonna invite more teams, up as many as 16, right? But we're gonna limit it to mostly. I'll just say four conferences since that's what it's probably going to be. Well, 4 out of 10 or whatever it is, that's not necessarily making progress, is it? I mean, do you have any issue with that?
That is not the part of the playoff that I have an issue with. What would you like to flood the playoff brackets with Sun Belt and Conference USA teams?
Well, no. See, you're kind of putting words in my mouth. No,
I'm not
but
trying to. I'm asking you a question. Where are these teams supposed to come from?
I already kind of told you what I thought, Mark. I think they should limit it. Is what I think they should do. I don't think. I think 12 actually might be the right number. In all fairness, I don't. I'm not going to say I know that. I think getting 14 in isn't a bad deal. But see, they're not going to stop at 14. It's already, well, if we're going to have 14, let's get 16. Okay, well, then maybe, I'm even okay with that too, to some extent. But, I don't know. I just kind of wonder if the playoff itself is what we need, and I'm not going to say it isn't. I'm not involved. Nobody's asking me my opinion. I don't know that my opinion's that important. But, I guess I'm thinking in terms of if I was in school, it's like I might after 12 games, that's putting everything on the line for 12 games. I don't know that I'd want to play another. I guess it's at least what? I guess it's only four more games, but I don't know that I want to put it all on the line for four more. After 12. I mean, it's only a season's only 12 weeks. So, I guess maybe it depends on the person, but maybe I'm wrong too. I could be wrong. Maybe they really want to do it that way, but I'm not sure that I would if I was there. But that's just me. So I know I played when I was in grade school, and they didn't have playoffs, and the season was only like I think that we only played 6 games. But no, I'm being honest with you. We played 6 games, and that was enough for me. I'm just being, that's how many six, and I didn't play in every game. I only
You
played
are
in like
currently making a comparison between you playing grade school football 6 games and the current college football playoff.
no. I'm saying when I played, I only played 1 year, but we only played six. I think we only played 6 games, and that was a season. That was enough for me.
I'm still curious, Chris, to know. Well, I'm not that curious, but
And I didn't play in
to follow up, what bowl game were you more interested in watching than any playoff game?
I'm not
What
even
game
sure
was
what you're
that?
asking. I'm not exactly sure what you're even asking. What
You
question?
said at the beginning of the conversation that there were bowl games that you enjoyed watching or cared to watch more than playoff games.
Are you talking from a historical perspective, or are you just talking
No,
from?
I thought you were talking about this particular season.
I don't remember. I think the only games I remember watching were the ones that were. So what difference does it make? It was like maybe I didn't even see the Alamo Bowl, so that I can't use that one. Maybe I don't know. I can't really answer that question really well. I'm just saying that I don't know that everybody necessarily wants to see 18 teams or whatever, because it'll probably go to 18 and then it'll go to 20, and then maybe they do. I mean, I don't know. I can't speak, but and then there was one other thing. This is kind of interesting, at least in my opinion. You might not share my opinion. It's kind of funny after having all these more teams that we still ended up with the same scenario at the end of the year. I mean, I think it was people are saying, "Oh no, it wasn't." Like, "Oh no, if we hadn't had all these teams in there, we wouldn't have had Ohio State and Notre Dame." I think that's not true at all. I think the way I remember it being, of course, you have to believe that I know what I'm talking about, which you might not, which is fine. I would have had Notre Dame and Indiana in a semifinal, and I think I'm not for sure about this part, but the only other team that could have entered into the conversation would have been Texas, maybe. But see, I think they got. Did they get? Yeah, they lost to Georgia in the SEC. So really, a 14 playoff would have still probably, in my opinion, because you would have had Ohio State and Oregon in the other. So really, adding 12 teams didn't really help anything. Everybody else was saying, "Oh no, if we hadn't had the 12 teams in there, we wouldn't have Notre Dame or Ohio State." Well, whatever. That's not how my bracket would have looked, but whatever. I know that's what they were saying. So anyway, I just thought I'd share that with you.
Well, the top 4 teams in the country at the end of the season,
I
according to
know
the
they had. I
rankings,
know they had it. I understand all that, but I'm
did
just
not
saying.
include Ohio State
I understand.
or Notre Dame.
Exactly. I understand that, but if they'd have followed my whatever you want to call it, my probably you think it's ridiculous, but if they'd have done what I would have wanted, it would have included both. So whatever. Don't do what I do, I guess, and you don't have to worry about it. But I'm not lying about that, by the way. But anyway, I think Indiana, people didn't have Indiana rated very high. So I understand why that would have been kind of okay, well. But anyway, I would have had Indiana and Notre Dame in one side, and I think I would have had Ohio State and Oregon on the other. But that's like looking back and, everything's crystal clear in hindsight. But just so you know where I'm coming from, though, because they were saying, oh no, 4 teams wouldn't have had those 2 teams in it. Well, kind of depends on who you ask, I guess. But anyway, so I don't really buy into that argument, but I understand why people are using it. Don't get me wrong. But and I think it worked out pretty well. I'm not gonna make it like Ohio State didn't win the thing, but I just don't know that I like the idea of a long, if people love it, then great. Let's have more of it. If that's really what's going on, I don't know. I don't really set the terms, so I could be wrong too.
Okay, Chris. Well, thanks for the call.
Yeah, but I just thought you might be interested. You probably think I'm lying to you, right? That I had Notre Dame and Ohio State in the Final Four. Well, I did, so at any rate, it doesn't really matter. But anyway,
Well done.
All right, thanks, Mark. Have a good day.
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate it.
Bye.
We have a recruiting show that we do. Also, the transfer portals included updates live every Tuesday, 1 p.m. Eastern Time with myself and Leanne Herring. So please join us. I've dropped the link of the channel. It's a new channel here at the Voice of College Football. It's our recruiting channel, which again also includes the transfer portal. And we have a good time every Tuesday, 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Leanne and myself talking college football with you. So Tuesday, 1 p.m. Eastern Time, the links there in the chat. We are looking to grow and build that channel as well. All right. Got a book here that I so much appreciate all of your support and the great feedback and the great comments that have been left both on Amazon and here in the chat and the various comments, social media, and so forth. Disputed National Champions. It's a quick read, but it's a good read, and it's pretty exhaustive in a concise, succinct sort of way, breaking down the 1990s season by season, but propelling those seasons into the BCS, the 14, the 12 team, and the 14 team college football playoff eras. The link is down in the description section. All right, folks, we appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. I released an Ohio State schedule breakdown this afternoon. Penn State is coming next. I think I'll release that tonight. Let's do that. Right here at the Voice of College Football. Dave's here, D-Rock Irish, Todd, and others. I so much appreciate everyone's support. And of course, Chris calling in. We will see you on Monday. Enjoy the weekend.